He's not here, but welcome to the greatest testing panel of all time. Well, hopefully we're going to try and make it that way. First of all, we got some stuff going on in the back there. So it's kind of like when somebody gets on stage and they're playing a song and they have to like tune their guitar, and they're like talking to the audience and stuff, and they're trying to pretend like they're not tuning a guitar, but they really are in the background. So they're like telling stories and stuff. That's what's going on with the mics. And so I want to talk about Batman. Who likes Batman? Raise your hand. A lot of people. Who has seen the new Batman vs. Superman movie? Who liked the movie? Kevin liked it in the back, so we got one person. I want to drop some knowledge on you guys just real quick while we're doing this little mic thing. Batman vs. Superman is a good movie. You should go see it. But what I really want to talk to you about is who is the greatest Batman of all time. And it's a lot to think about. You've got Adam West. Right? Okay, we've got some yeses down here. We got Val Kilmer, right? George Clooney, the George Clooney. Michael Keaton. And then we had, most recently, we had, who do we have? We had Christian Bale, right? Christian Bale, the skinny Batman. He was skinny. And then we had Ben Affleck, who came. All right, she just stole my thunder. All right, so here's what I'm about to tell you. You were supposed to say, oh yeah, Christian Bale is the greatest Batman of all time. That's not true. The greatest Batman of all time is Kevin Conroy, who is the voice of Batman, the animated series, which is a kids show. So that's a little information for you. Go home. It's on Amazon. Go watch it. I promise you're going to like it. All right, enough of Batman. We're going to introduce the panel here. Just keep in mind, I will probably put my foot in my mouth 5 times while I'm upstage. So please, just don't think of me with QASymphony when I do those things. Okay, here we go. We've got Mike Cooper, who is the Chief Quality Officer for healthcare IT leaders and also Run Consultants. He's also on our board of advisors, so he's very smart. And then we also have Fred Furia, who is a part of Sev1. He's a team lead over at Sev1. Good job. That was a good back high five. And then we've also got Elise Carmichael, who is Director of Product Engineering over at Mobiquity. So welcome them to the stage here. Let's give them a round of applause.
All right.
We're going to try to make this a little bit more combative than last panel. Elise told me she wanted to punch Mike in the face when they were talking to each other about the topics that we're about to go over today. So it's going to get crazy in here, just so everyone knows. She didn't say that. She's really nice.
I said that.
You did say that, didn't you? You said you wanted to punch him. All right, so I would like just quick give some introductions, Elise, Fred, and Mike, and give me an interesting thing about yourself as well. We want to actually know you guys. We know we're not just geniuses up here. We want, we have a personal life and we have things going on. We're more like you people, right? Okay, so let's go ahead, Elise, and go ahead and introduce yourself.
So hi, Elise Carmichael. I work at Mobiquity, so we're a professional services company. We specialize in mobile app development. And he actually got my title wrong. I'm the mobile queen.
Yes.
That's my new title. So if you have any mobile situations.
Things to do with royalty, if you want to ask those questions.
The queen of mobile, yeah.
Queen of mobile.
Yes.
Or the mobile.
Either way, yeah.
So I've been in the industry about 15 years. I started off testing chips in telecommunications. And let's see, something interesting. So the reason I chose QTest at our company is because I play the flute and the piccolo on the side. QASymphony really spoke to me. I'm in a lot of
That's a pun.
symphonies.
Did you get that? That's a pun. Did you get it? Yeah. All right, go Fred.
No, that's it.
Okay, wow. I'm Fred Furia. I come from Sev1. We're a company in Delaware, with offices in locations as well, Massachusetts and Bulgaria. And I'm a quality manager there, and I think I've been put on this panel as a little bit of revenge, being put between 2 very serious experts in Agile, something I've only been doing for the past year, even though I've been doing IT for over 20 years. So
you know everything. You're ready
No,
to go.
I'm going to be deferring to these two on
read-
everything.
Yeah, you've read all the
But no,
blogs.
no. I mean, we're a rapid growth company. We have a lot of the struggles that go along with that, and Agile is one of the pieces we put in place to make sure we don't just fizzle out from not surviving our own growth.
Yep.
Right. So I do have some good stories to tell and good experience to draw on, but maybe not like you two. And my special fact about myself is I play ice hockey. So scrum was really good for me because I've actually been in physical, real scrums on a weekly basis when I go play with the other awful hockey players. So.
All right, well, hopefully he doesn't hip check me. That would be tough right here, yeah.
I usually use the stick, and I don't have that.
All
so
right,
you're
all
good.
right, no problem. So, yeah, my name is Michael Cooper. As Ryan mentioned, I'm a Chief Quality Officer for healthcare IT leaders and for Run Consultants, but I also do advisory work and consulting for companies like Accenture and we're, Cloud First, where I'm actually a customer of Qtest. In terms of unofficial titles that we discussed, I am the quality rock star of the group. She's the queen of mobility there, or the mobile queen. And interesting thing from a testing perspective is I've done either testing consulting or speaking at a presentation on 6 of the 7 continents. So I've done testing on every continent except for Antarctica.
Oh,
Yeah. Is that,
see what I mean?
I get it. What's your name, Fred? Do you have a name for you? What's your?
You call me the goon, I guess.
Okay. All right, that's fine. Fred's going with that. Just keep reminder, we've got, submit questions to us. I just got an awesome question. It just says, Ryan, you look very dashing today. Where did you get that shirt and jacket? That's very nice of you. Thank you for saying that. Actually, this is from J.Crew, and this is from Zara. So if you want to talk to me about fashion afterwards, you can talk to me or Ian Stewart, one of our sales reps. We're very dashing in the office. So thank you for that. But be sure to be submitting those questions because we want to make sure we're interacting with you all. So let's go ahead and get started here. Our topic is the impact of Agile development on testing. And one of the things that in Agile, we hear this a lot, and one of the things is basically that everybody on the Agile team is a tester, right? And everyone shares that type of responsibility. And that's true, right? But if everyone here is a tester, sort of, in the room, then is there really a need for a designated type tester? And with that type of mindset, everyone is a tester. So I'd like to ask, starting off with Mike here, is kind of what unique viewpoint or skills does testing bring to the Agile development team that is maybe outside of that, oh yeah, everyone's a tester, so we don't have to really worry about testing?
Okay, so first of all, I'm going to disagree with the question.
All right, that's fine.
Okay, so I don't think everybody is a tester. I think everybody is responsible for quality, which is quite different,
Okay.
right? So everybody has to have a quality perspective. I think what somebody who's a quality professional, a tester, a software developer in test, whatever you want to call us, brings to the table a lot of times is the questioning, the training and experience to know where things can go wrong. I think that it's that challenging mentality and the customer perspective that the quality professionals bring to the table.
So I'm going to agree with the everyone's responsible. I think that's true. I think every single person on your project, even if they're more business oriented, and we don't follow Scrum exactly, so I might not use Scrum Master or Product Owner, but we have a project manager, and they're usually responsible for just resourcing and money and client relations, but we make sure that they know the product inside and out. I expect them to test every production release. Sometimes we expect them to do demos. So yes, everyone is testing, but the testers on our team are the ones writing the test cases, executing the test cases, being really diligent if we need documentation for regulated industries. So yes, everyone's a tester, but only the testers are actually responsible for making sure it's tested.
And that sounds familiar, but I could bring you a question as a recent adopter, or actually I could add to your list as well, not just the skills and the aptitudes, but also a willingness and an interest in quality.
Curiosity.
Because as a company that's just converted over 100 development engineers to be in Scrum teams, there is a cultural change there for them, and there is a little bit of resistance to it. And I would want to ask, have you had to deal with that specifically and usher in the new culture in a gentle enough way that it works out?
Yeah, gentle, I don't know, but
We're swamps.
but yeah, and certainly that's an important aspect to make sure everybody's on board, and that's all the collaboration that was discussed in the last panel as well. And I think we have a question coming up that may address that as well.
Well, one of the things that we talk about is we just said kind of we definitely need testers, right? That's there's some definitely need there, hopefully, or else we wouldn't have products here to tell you guys. So we definitely need testers, right? But is the Agile tester different than the Agile tester or the waterfall tester, right? I mean, if you think about what types of skills and viewpoints does a tester bring, I remember when I was coming out of college, I worked at a donut shop, and I had a finance degree, and then I just somehow got into testing just because it was the first job I had. And Elise was talking to me about this the other day, which was basically that you have testers get into the SDLC a little bit different than traditional programmers, which are they have a computer science degree, and then they kind of jump in and they start coding right away, whereas testers, they come from all different various types of backgrounds. So what key things do you guys look for in developing your testing team that may not be the simple, hey, do you do C# programming and that's it?
So one of my favorite interview questions is for people who are entry-level testers, maybe just have a knack for it but don't really have experience. We still might hire them as a more junior tester, but I'll ask them, when you're testing, when you think about the idea of you testing a mobile device versus a desktop app, what are some of the things that you think about? So you get a sense of how they're thinking about it. It's not just can you follow these 10 steps and make sure it works. It's how are you thinking about the actual product that we're building? How are you thinking more like how a user might think, or how that app will behave in the real world? I don't know if that answers the question.
Right, do you have something to add?
Yeah, definitely.
Goon, right?
Yeah, the Goon.
The Goon will
has
speak
experience
now.
in this as well.
Yeah.
And this
Listen to the
this
Goon.
transcends Agile too. So I can tell you, my life changed when I started adding a very simple test to the candidates, and it's nice because you can leave the room while they take it too. Just a very simple question, or two questions. Number one, pick your favorite application, something you can do in it. List the names of 10 tests you would write for it. Just list them out. You want to understand how they're thinking. Just make sure they can write a test plan, a test strategy, or at least how they would think if they had to do that. And then on the next page, you just ask them, pick one of those and write it. Write the steps, 10 to 20 steps. And it really, it went from, it just went much better. The candidates that we ended up picking, we had a lot of people not work out before we started doing that. So
We have something like that. We created a code challenge. We made a simple website that has a lot of bugs in it.
Yeah.
And it's even got some Easter eggs. So I think if you have the console open its website, it'll say, if you found this, make sure to document it because you opened up the console. Good job.
that's great.
I like that.
That's great.
Are there specific things, Mike, that you may kind of grill somebody who's interviewing or look for?
Yeah, absolutely. I do a lot of behavioral-based interviewing. And it depends on the position you're looking for, because they're all different types of positions. A lot of companies now are actually looking for people that can help in defect prevention and defect avoidance, or give the developers superpowers, if you will, by developing frameworks or tools or utilities to allow them to develop better code.
Yep.
So that's another aspect. So I might give a coding test to somebody who is, an automation engineer or system engineer.
Yep.
I'll ask certain, what would you do in this scenario, and get some answers. A lot of the times I depend on referrals and people I know, or somebody who's worked with somebody, and when you grow a wide network, that helps. So those are some of the things I look for.
I have one last thing to add.
Sure.
If someone has a physics degree, I will hire them as a tester. I've just had the.
You won't?
I will.
Oh, you will?
I've had just the best
How
luck
many
with
physics
people.
degrees do you have on your team?
Yeah, 3 maybe.
Oh, okay.
It's a couple. It's a couple, but they've been just outstanding. So.
Physics.
Yeah, my best QA professional that's worked for me 6 different times. Some of you may know him, Bill McKissick, who's still at T-Mobile where I used to run quality. And he was a developer first, and then he was a Presbyterian minister. And with that interesting background, with his kind of communication skills and evangelism, and his technical skills, graduated at the top of his class from Georgia Tech, he was a double threat, right? Yeah. And it wasn't like he was groveling to say, oh well, we can't release this. It was, I'm one of the smartest guys in the room. You need to meet one of our high quality standards, and that's a different point of view. Where if he can pull apart the code, then that brings something else to the table. Yeah,
you guys would do like communion every Sunday afternoon, like during the test, and you got so. That was a little joke. I'm actually in seminary, which is kind of funny that he would say that. So I actually fit the perfect mold as a tester because I'm in seminary. I didn't go to Georgia Tech. Kyle went to Georgia Tech, but not saying much. All right, here we go. So let's move on to the next question here. One of the principles for the Agile Manifesto is to emphasize individuals and customer collaboration over processes and tools. And so we're constantly hearing, and we talked about those, or we were talking about it, but basically having an ear for the end user and always thinking like the end user, right? We always want to think about that person. How do you instill into your testing to always be thinking about end user, either in test planning or test execution? And then here's another curveball. When is it good not to think like the end user would? Is there such a scenario where you would just say, no, I'm not, that's dumb. That's a dumb idea. I'm not doing it.
I'll take the first one. So this is something, when I was at T-Mobile, and you guys know T-Mobile is the Un-carrier, right? And is very customer focused. We used, when I was there, the CIO actually gave everybody mugs that said WITSE, which is what is the customer experience. So whenever there were defects that were going to go into production, we would say, who's this going to affect? Okay, so we'd say we've got, the tax is calculated wrong, but it only affects prepaid customers in Puerto Rico. That's okay, all right? But if there was a performance, and there are 60 of those, and we could call them all or send them an email. But if there was a performance defect, okay, that slowed down the customer service reps for 1 second, 1 second equals $1 million a year if they are delayed 1 second. So you have to think about that business. So the second part of the question is when don't you take that customer experience into mind? I think in a DevOps perspective, sometimes you have to take that operations perspective. So again, at T-Mobile, for example, if there's something that's going to cause an operations guy to have to run cleanup jobs every night, you may want to prioritize that defect, right? Or so an operation defect or regulatory thing. So if it's better for the customer, but you're going to have to pay a fine or something like that, then that's another example. And I could think of 10 others, but I'll give these guys a chance. Go ahead.
So I have a question for you all. Do any of you use UX-driven Agile? Have you heard of it? So this is something we follow. The idea is we don't have a big requirements document. I mean, I guess a lot of us probably don't because Agile doesn't usually call for that documentation up front. But we do wireframes, and we have kind of a design process up front. We have a roadmap of the entire application we're going to build. It could be a 2-week engagement or a 2-year engagement. We'll design enough so that we can program effectively. So what we do is our designers will create personas. So they will actually make a slide or a presentation or a sheet that has pictures and descriptions of the people who will use the app. So your typical John Smith, and it'll have background on this made-up person, and it'll talk about a day in the life of John Smith using the app. And when we do kind of a handoff between the designers up front and then to the build team. So the build team also kind of includes the designers in a small way, but they're not actually on the project day to day. But the developers and QA are on the project, and we do this handoff and we go over the personas. We talk about and let the whole team visualize exactly who is using the app. It gives you names and ideas.
Is this where you're getting into
who's
like
testing
doing
it.
paired testing and things like that? Do you guys do that over it?
We don't really do pair testing, but we do keep the creative team as part of the testing process.
Okay.
So they have to also okay everything at the end. So they expect the app to look and behave a certain way, and just to make sure that it looks and is pixel perfect,
Yeah.
we have them also involved in the testing process when possible.
Elise, you mentioned personas, and I'm a big believer in personas. Do you also do customer journeys?
Yes.
Tell
we
us
do.
about that. Yeah.
I'm not so involved with those. I don't
Okay.
know how well I could talk about them.
Took over my moderator.
Yeah, well,
job. What am I doing up here? I'm just
Yeah.
like, I'm just leaving. No, anyway.
Yeah.
Actually, I wanted to switch gears here and
Yeah,
actually
go
get
ahead.
to a question. And Fred is key to answer this because we have people in the audience here asking, how do you best integrate a manual tester from a waterfall approach into a new Scrum team? And I know Fred is, you want to talk about your Agile transformation and kind of what you're doing on right now.
Sure. I mean, that there are a lot of aspects of it, but I guess Sev1 recently went from, or for the past 9 months or so, we went from, it wasn't quite waterfall, they were calling it Agile when I got there, but it was really, it was kind of, to me, it looked like waterfall in sprints, right?
Yep.
So we did have to do that transformation where.
Show of hands, who's had that happen
Who's
before?
done
All
waterfall in
right.
sprints? Okay, good, it's not just me. See, that's why I've got the shared experience at least. So in waterfall, it seemed like, yes, we were testing the specific changes as they happened, right? Every change individually went through a process, and then there was this massive round of regression testing and trying to get everything validated because there was a lot of risk created by changes that happened to areas that we didn't even think we touched, right? So
Yep.
it's just been, I mean, really, it's been a matter of training, and just. Everyone at the company went through Scrum training, right? We watched videos, we had someone come in who's a foremost expert and went through sessions with everybody and explained how, it's not just, when I got there, QA was a tool. Okay, it's time to, a drill, time to use the drill.
Yep.
And now they're part of the team, we're fully integrated. Engineering includes QA. It was a totally separate department with separate management back then. So
Gotcha.
we had a VP come in dedicated to QA. And one of the first things she did was insist that we're all engineers. And we got training for the people who didn't have engineering skills, right? Because everyone has to know at least some degree of automation,
Right.
or it's not going to work.
So Fred picks up another question that, since the word automation came up,
Yes.
we'll dive into that now. But I know Elise and Fred will contribute to this as well. But one of the questions, and we talked about this kind of in our pre-meeting, was revolving around the technical debt, possibly, that you may
Yes.
have with manual testing.
It's a big issue for us.
And we had a question here basically that says, how do you basically, you're out there, you got a test team, you have hundreds and hundreds of manual tests, or even thousands. You need to go automated, right? You need to figure out, how do I do automation, right? How do you manage all the manual testing that you have to do in current sprints and current releases, while also trying to figure out, well, how do I also move these into automation so I don't have to keep doing these manual tests the next sprint, and then the next sprint, and the next sprint, right? So what type of insight can we gain from
My
that?
answer is we're still working that out. But
Okay,
we have some ideas that, so when I got to the company, we did not have a lot of written tests, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was just check this area, check that area. We were a company of 2 people less than a decade ago. So now we've got 600 going on 700 by the end of the year probably. So it's been a massive need to change to make sure that really that the good ideas don't get lost and the company doesn't fizzle out or die of its own growth, right? So, and it's not a desperate situation. It's going well, but we're still figuring things out. And so yeah, we've got a couple of ideas. Like right now, I have a team that's dedicated to working on that backlog, and that was the plan initially, right? As of 6 months ago, we were going to work down the backlog at a certain rate. I think we had 800 tests in the queue that needed to be automated, or as many of them as made sense to automate. And so we chugged along. We had 3 people dedicated to doing that. We had Scrum teams instructed that at least all your P1s need to be automated coming in. So 800, we were looking at our initial list, went down to 600, 550. We're doing a great job. And then it was time to do regression testing for another release, and we found there were over 900 manual tests in the library, in the Q-test library, right?
Right.
So, the Scrum teams are putting them in still. So we're ratcheting up the requirements, the definition of done, to include P2 next time around. So we're going to shut that off at the source. And meanwhile, we have to figure out, by the time we do shut it off completely, we're probably going to have 1,500 or more manual tests. So one idea we have floating around is dedicated automation sprint. And this goes back to the culture of making sure the developers understand, and this is a little bit better than making developers do manual testing all of a sudden. It's having them develop tests, so at least it's still development.
Using the
they are
technical
amenable to
prowess
doing
they
that.
already have, right?
Yes, they're good at that.
Right.
I don't think that they necessarily all want to jump in and do it, but that's one of the things we're because we have a large engineering team, they can accomplish a lot in 1 or 2 sprints. So that's the kind of thing we're thinking about, because it doesn't make sense to ramp up a massive team. I have a team of 3 right now. They'll probably always be needed, but I'm not going to need 30 people for more than the time we do that, right? So it doesn't make sense. So
well, Mike, what about you? What would you say to solving this technical debt issue, but also maintaining quality? Yeah.
So I'm on a new project right now that started about a month ago with currently 7 Scrum teams, and we are just taking the acceptance criteria. Okay, as a manager, we do this, this, and this, and the QA professionals are writing BDD using Gherkin type of language, and then we're automating right there, right? So Cucumber to Java to Selenium, integrated into Jenkins, flows through Q-tests, and off we go. So we're just not writing the, step 1, step 2, step 3. We're doing given, when, then, and then automating. That's it. Just boom.
And as your manual testing, has it moved more to more context-driven type exploratory testing that you're trying to?
Yeah, I would say so. There is some level of exploratory testing, but right now since we're relatively early in development, we are focused on just making sure that we've got buy-in from the customer on the acceptance criteria, going straight to BDD and then straight to automation. And so far, we're avoiding the technical debt. Now, 6 months down the road, it may be a different story.
Right.
But so far, so good. I mean, however, I mentioned T-Mobile, or I worked with Rick and Diane at Equifax several years ago, and we had, thousands and thousands of test cases, and that's a whole different situation. But when you're in a greenfield situation, you can just, avoid that. And hopefully, I'm in a rosy situation now, and hopefully it stays like that.
And Elise, I know you were talking about you have a big heart for automation, and talking about the automation bandwagon and things to look out for, what to prioritize, things like that.
Yeah, so I think that kind of depends on your industry and what you're building. Can I get a show of hands again for who's in services industries where you're building lots of products? And then who's got a product company? Yeah, really.
So a mix.
Yeah, it looks like a pretty good mix. So I would automate completely different things at both of those types of companies. So we're a services company. We have some longer term customers, ones you've probably heard of, like Panera or Weight Watchers. And if we have a multi-release customer, then yes, we want to automate things as we can. If it's a one-off where we're doing a 2-month-long project, we're probably not going to automate any of it, because we're going to hand it to the customer, and it's not necessarily worth all the time up front that it takes to set up the framework and get the CI set up. So that being said, on the longer term projects, the first thing my test team's going to do to figure out what to automate is, ideally we'll automate everything, but in reality a lot of these projects already exist in some fashion, so we have to pick and choose. So we're going to do a risk analysis as the very first thing. We're going to figure out what is the highest risk area. Are we in healthcare? Do we have PHI? Do we have PII? Are we regulated by COPA or the child protection? Do we have financials?
So you brought up healthcare. Who's in healthcare? We had a healthcare question. So I know we have Mike and also Elise here has had a lot of experience in healthcare. One of the questions that came through was, healthcare is a different animal. That's what they said. And it's true. So setting up project management and Agile has to work with a third-party app only. It said configuration and customization is what we have to consider. How might you do a PPM process?
Yeah, I'll take it. So PPM is a good TLA or a three-letter acronym. I'm going to guess it's portfolio and project management. Okay, Nancy. Okay, good. Good.
Nancy, was that your question? All right, cool.
All right. So we had drinks last night, so I heard a little bit more specific about this situation, and you're in a unique situation where you have, large development teams, but you're the only, person focused on testing. So that's a rough situation, and
Sorry,
yeah,
Nancy.
and I think, and personally, I think you need to hire a specialty company to help you with their testing, but. Yeah, and
Mike, do you know any companies?
Yeah, healthcare IT leaders. But no, you've got some unique challenges because you do have compliance issues. If something screws up, you can, impact people's clinical outcomes, or they can die, right? And you can cost the hospital millions of dollars. So I recently ran a project where we had 80 testers running across 85 hospitals at Catholic Health Initiative, and it was the opposite of the project the cloud project I just described. It was mainly manual testing. The vendors provided a lot of the test cases, it's all about compliance. What I like about Q-Test Explorer and healthcare is you have that evidence you need when somebody says, "Did you really test it? How can you prove it?" Right? And I think that's that. In terms of PPM, I think Elise has got the right approach with kind of a risk-based approach. What's the probability of a failure, and then what's the impact of failure, right? So, I think that's a long discussion, but, I think you're on the right road in terms of the discussion we had last night, and happy to discuss it with you further. Yeah.
Do you guys want to add?
I did a moment ago. Thought probably had left me.
Okay.
Oh, no, I lied.
Got
So
it.
healthcare. Healthcare was one of the reasons that we really needed a new testing tool. You can call Q-Test a testing tool. But we really needed that traceability to say, yeah, we did actually test this thing. I promise we're getting audited. Here's the whole traceability. And now that you can, see that a defect test was executed within JIRA, everything goes back to JIRA, which is our truth software. So we like Q-Test with our truth software, but JIRA is what everyone at the company uses.
So I got two more questions. We got about 5 minutes left. I want to get to both of these. One is revolving around the fact that in Agile, you're trying to release very quickly, right? And I heard a lot about sprint burn down charts and velocity charts, right? And I was reading something today, and it was talking about getting something to where it's just good enough. And I've seen this in Agile teams where they are so concerned about their sprint burn down chart that they want to make it all nice and clean that they'll just say, oh yeah, it's ready to go. It's good enough. Push it. We can report these metrics back to the executive team and look really awesome. What makes, when you actually get to that type of talking about good enough or if it's done, what makes a feature or product that you are testing done? And it's really around a discussion of done. And have you, and then the second question is, have you been on the flip side of that where there's been disastrous consequences where you've said, oh yeah, it's good enough, push it, go, and then you realize we didn't test this enough in an Agile type environment?
Yeah, good. And I don't want to take up all the air. I've got some examples, but go ahead if you have.
I think probably everyone in this room has some good examples of some terrible stories. I had one product, this was at a different company, where we were doing online bidding, and we had moved all of our customers to the cloud, which we thought was great. We were hosting for them. They previously had hosted everything themselves, and then we realized we had everyone's passwords in clear text in the database.
Oh no.
We didn't really test that well enough and didn't think about it. So that was one of my disasters.
Yeah, so to answer the first part of the question, when is it good enough?
Yep.
Right? I'll use another T-Mobile example. We really started to move towards a DevOps type of continuous integration environment while I was there, and we would do at least 2 builds a day on content releases for web, and obviously mobile apps, could even, were on a relatively frequent type of thing. So we had to get to a point where it's good enough, but what we did was we made it so it was easy to roll back, right? If there was an issue, we can flip a switch and it would go away. Or we would do a champion challenger type of thing. Let's run a campaign, but let's only have it run in 2 stores, right? Or let's only have it run in this region, from this time to this time, and see what happens, right? Or we would release some new web feature as a beta, right? And people knew what they were getting into. We also did a little bit of crowdsourced testing. So those are some techniques that you can use to do that. In terms of disasters, one of my favorite disasters was on Valentine's Day. And this was relatively early in Android. One of the new Galaxies came out, and we said, okay, we're going to do a buy one, get one. And we used to do it only on like one device. If you buy one Galaxy, you get another one, right? Yep. And in this case, we said we're going to do it on any phone. And so people were just shopping the catalog online and in the store, and we had an outage. So I flew out to Seattle, which is where the headquarters are, and I was ready to face the music, right? We had a several hour outage. I called one of my peers who was the SVP of operations, and I said, hey, Mike, I'm in one of the stores. We have an outage. He says, yeah, I'm seeing it. What's going on there, And so I go to face the music, and lo and behold, I get hugs from the customer delivery group coming into the building in Seattle. So they said, that was the best promotion ever. And I said, well, what about the outage? They said, if we hadn't have gone down for those 2 hours and people had left the stores or stopped shopping, we would have given away too many phones. And it kind of stopped the bleeding. So then, first thing you do is root cause analysis. You say, what happened? Yeah. So, because I know the first question I'm going to get is, why did you miss this in testing? Has anybody ever heard that?
Yeah.
Okay, so we went and looked back, and I was working with a telecom vendor by the name of Amdocs, and they said, Mike, don't you remember? I'm like, no, I got a lot of test cases. They said, we raised this defect, and it was escalated. We caught it, and they said, there will never be 10 times load, right? And that's what happened, 10 times load. So the business people had said, this isn't going to happen. No. We had reported the defect, and the result of it, by the way, was we got an investment for a performance testing lab. So it was not a bad outcome.
See, defects are good.
Yeah.
Just let them flow out there and see what happens. Might get a promotion.
Yeah, it worked out. So anyways, so that's one disaster story. But
Fred, you want to close this out with a disaster story?
No, I can tell you that we're pretty new with our Scrum, so I don't have a Scrum disaster story for you. I'd like to think that's because we're very strict about the definition of done.
Okay.
All the documents have to be lined up. And we had a management team come in from another, like a Fortune 500 software company that's been doing it for a long time, and they're very adamant that Scrum has to be complete and full. Yeah. I could tell you disaster stories from before that, but you guys are talking about former clients and former engagements, and I'd be talking about Sev 1. So I need a non-disclosure signed by everyone in this room to discuss anything like that. Right. And I don't think we have time for that. So.
Well, cool. So thank you all for joining. This has been, like I was saying earlier, the greatest testing panel ever, and hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Give a round of applause for our people over here.